welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. I am super excited to be here with Sean Randall. He has such a big, beautiful story that we're going to do this in 2 episodes. We're going to talk about making things in your life better. We so many of us just want things to be better than they are now. We don't like the way that things are, and we really want it to be different and better. And so there are steps to actually making that happen. And we're going to talk about some of those steps today and more of those steps next week. Sean, thank you so much for being here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you are doing now in the world?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's so great to be here on Be the Wolf. And, what I'm doing now, I think, is being the wolf finally after many,
Yes.
many years, being myself. And that's an author. I'm a metaphysical novelist and poet. So I've got 2 poetry books, Words Like Wine and a Piece of My Mind, and my metaphysical novel, Letters from Lima, and a work of nonfiction called The Manifestation Method, which we'll probably get into a lot in the second episode of this, of the how-to, the practical application of how do you become the person that you truly are and that you want to be and experience those things. And so I work with students imparting that process. And I'll add on my mind today as we get started. My father passed away this Saturday. He was 80 years young, and it's always difficult. My older brother and I were both with him, so that part of it was really a blessing. And my older brother curated some of his favorite songs, and the last couple of days he was with us in the hospital. He was playing some of his favorite music, and we knew we were pretty close to the end on Saturday afternoon. And My Way by Frank Sinatra.
For just one moment, you're a little staticky. So
Okay.
this is an important story. So I really want to make sure that we all hear it. Okay, so you were in the hospital.
Yep. Am I clear now? Is the audio clear now?
Oh no, you're a little staticky still.
I don't know. I don't know what went wrong.
Oh no.
We tested.
We tested.
How
That's
about
true.
now?
I don't know. Say something.
When you have to say something, it's like, what do I say? Is the audio clear?
No, we are still a little staticky. Let's try unplugging the headphones altogether, maybe. And let's see what happens. Okay, and then go to the audio settings.
Okay.
I can hear you.
How does it sound?
Great. Perfect.
All right. We'll do that. Okay.
All right.
For those checking in, I'm having technical difficulties today. This is our third attempt. Janaea prepped us well before we tested several times. So technical difficulties are giving us an opportunity to apologize, and we'll move on from there. But
and maybe it's your dad saying hello.
Yeah, he wanted this story to linger as long as possible on the podcast. Well, he had a flair for the dramatic, and that was kind of the point I was getting to with the story. So My Way by Frank Sinatra came on, and I think we all know the message of that song is doing it your way. And as the last note drifted away, he went with it, and I thought, that was really apropos of who he was as a person. And I learned a lot from my dad through my lifetime by observation and by things that he would say. And but particularly towards the end of his life, I got to know him in ways that I never did growing up. And he was always a big supporter of mine through a lot of the stuff we'll talk about today. So I think it's important for people to know that I was really blessed and fortunate to have his support during some of these stories we'll tell. And um, I'm empowered and motivated to keep his memory going and his work going. So
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing a little bit of him with us.
yeah, well,
And
I felt like people should, if I get emotional during this podcast, which I'm prone to anyway, I cry during not that, it doesn't take much. So anyway, if I get emotional, that's probably what's driving it. But
yeah. And, underneath all of that, I know you've expressed such gratitude. And, as we say our goodbyes to people that we love, we get to be held with this place that how lucky are we that we got to experience them and in different ways when it's somebody we've known for a long time, because we grow and shift and change and they grow and shift and change. And that
yeah,
is, of course, a big be the wolf quality.
yeah,
So you living this life of who you truly are, it wasn't always this free flow for you. There was some darker times, let's put it that way. Let's start. There was a point in your life where you were an executive with like Starbucks and Nordstrom's, and let's kind of dip back to that point in your life in the, what do we call the tens, the early 2000 teens? I don't know. What do we call
yeah.
those?
The 2000s into the 2010s, I guess. Yeah. So as a young guy, ended up in quick service food and beverage management, and I ended up at Starbucks at the right time, for sure. The company was growing leaps and bounds, and that helped um, grow my career. And um, Starbucks was a great place for me to work because it was a company that really cared about the workplace, and it cared about how we treated each other, and it cared about how it interacted with the community. And the core purpose was to provide people with an uplifting experience. I'm suddenly blanking on the whole thing, but that was the message of what we were all about. And so that was really rewarding to be a part of that. And it was exciting to, grow my career and learn so much and interact with so many people. And from there, I went to Nordstrom, and that's when I moved to Chicago, and had a really good position there. And, I was a success, it was at that point that I was, I had a lot of the things that people think that they want in their life. And I thought that I wanted it too. And so I was making a good income, and I was having a lot of fun. And, life was pretty good, but I wasn't satisfied with who I was. And I hadn't felt like I had done anything. I don't want to use the word significant, but significant to me. I felt like my work was good. It was fine, but it wasn't. I knew it wasn't where my true calling or passion was. I was aware of it at the whole time I was doing it. And I started writing at a young age, and had been encouraged by teachers and different people when I was in my teen years. And so I'd never not written and been writing, but I wasn't doing it for a living, and I wasn't pursuing it the way that I certainly do now. And there was just something. There was a part of me that was disengaged, and I think my personal happiness started to deteriorate during that time.
Yeah. So what was it? I think this is a really common thing for a lot of people. They have this passion or this thing that they love when they're younger, and but they do that route of what you think you should do. And sometimes it's like you have a part-time job and you end up staying there and you kind of get sucked in, whatever it might be. But what was it for you that had you lean into working in working with the corporations you were working with, as opposed to leaning into something you were more passionate about?
Yeah, I think so. I was in my early 20s. I was a singer songwriter, and was trying to make my way playing in piano bars and stuff like that. And when I was from teenagers into early 20s, I wanted to be Billy Joel when I grew up, and that was the dream. And
Billy Joel.
yeah, there's one problem is I'm not Billy Joel. I'm Sean Randall, and I know. Retrospectively, I didn't hear him say this at the time. I remember Billy Joel talking about battling depression, and because he wanted to be Beethoven, and the problem was he wasn't Beethoven, he was Billy Joel. And so it's something I've learned later, that the person that, and I think this is true a lot of times when we look at people who are accomplished in their field or celebrity or whatever, we look and we're like, we want to be like them, but the truth is they probably, if a lot of them want to be somebody else too, and that leads to unhappiness and that kind of thing. So as I got kind of towards 25 years old, I started to have a lot of self-doubt about my musical career. I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't feel old, but I felt old for what I was trying to do. I hadn't broken through and had success by the time I was 22, 23, and it started to really weigh on me that, I don't think this is going to happen. And the truth is, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you will be correct.
Well, that's definitely true. We're getting static again.
Oh my goodness.
But I do want to say, it's like, if we look into, these dreams about being something really big, like a rock star or something like that, we have these models growing up of people that are doing things that affect our lives emotionally. And so there seems to be such like power in that, like leaning into, oh, how do we get to affect other people in a positive way? And I think we're young. We don't necessarily see the people that are doing maybe the kind of work that you and I are doing now, but we see these people that are making music. We see these athletes that are hopefully putting out good messages and all of that.
Yeah, and I think still staticky.
It's still staticky.
I do not know what the solution is here.
I do not know either. I wonder.
I feel like it's got to be a connection issue. It's not a hardware issue of any kind. Are
you plugged into anything in particular?
No. At this point, I'm just direct. There's no wire involved at all. I mean, let me see if.
We're having technical difficulties.
Anything now? How's the sound now?
Staticky. Yeah.
I am at a loss. The only thing I can think to do, and we're live is probably not a good idea, is actually exit out and reconnect.
Oh, exit out and reconnect. Let's do it.
Okay, I'll try.
We can do whatever we want. I'll just blabber on about something.
All right, yeah. Give your audience an update on what you're doing, and I'll be right back.
All right. So as we're having technical difficulties, those of you that are watching or listening are privy to, I want to take this opportunity to really step into the idea of perfectionism. Because I know that so many of us out there are stuck in this place of being really scared to put our foot forward into the things we want that might make our life better, because we're afraid of screwing up. We're afraid of it not looking perfect. And so what'll happen sometimes is that we will like rework things over and over and over until we think that it's perfect. Or if we have hiccups go wrong, we will just shut down and freak out. when the reality is life is full of mistakes. There's nothing perfect. Let's see if we sound perfect
I am
now.
so nervous right now. How does it sound?
You sound great.
All right. Well, at least we know the solution if it happens again. So I
Yeah.
apologize to you and to the audience. We really did try to avoid this, but I think I caught the tail end of what you were saying there, is that things happen in life. So
Yeah,
um,
things happen.
yeah, so you were kind of talking about how the way that certain people make us feel, and I think that that's right, and I think that we look at people in the public life, and we are affected by the work that they've done, and we want to do that for other people. I think that's a really natural inclination, and um, it's a great place to start, and it's a great place to start thinking about who you are and what you want to do. But you have to be willing to be yourself and not try to become what somebody else is, because the reason that they're so effective is because they're doing their work in an authentic way, typically. And so, yeah, I mean, I think without belaboring that point, I got to mentally, the doubts had crept in. And I
Right.
think people who are into performing music and stuff, it's a doubt filled process, for most of us. Every time you play, and certainly when you're not playing, you're thinking about what it is that you want to do, and um, so the psychology of it is huge. And for me, I had a lot of doubt, and um, I just didn't feel. It was a lot of things. I didn't feel worthy of the success if I had ended up having it. And then I also felt like if I didn't have it, that my life would be horrible, and I didn't want that either. And so it was a lot of
Yeah.
fear and a lot of self-doubt, and I chose a safer path. And I think that that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
It's what a lot of us are guided to do by parents and by mentors, and really well-meaning people in society kind of want to prevent us from the perceived pain of having your dreams crushed. And
Right.
I'm here to say that having your dreams crushed is a far superior outcome to not pursuing them, and that's where the real pain is when you're pursuing a path that's not true to yourself. No matter whether it leads to a successful career, or whatever the things that you want to have in your life are, if you're going about getting them by doing something that's not intuitive or intrinsic to your nature and yourself, then it's going to end up with some a lack of balance and a lack of alignment in yourself.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really think about is that we all have to live with ourselves, right? We are the ones that are here residing in our body, listening to our thoughts all of the time. And so when we give up on things, or we bend and contort our ways in ways that are about fulfilling somebody else's dreams, or doing what other people think that we should do, what starts to happen at an unconscious level, and most people are not even aware that this is happening, is they start to get mad at themselves for not trying, and for not giving it their all, and for not picking up when things got hard. And so it starts to become this cycle, this swirl of, I'll just say, lack of respect for oneself. I'll make it a little nicer than some of the words that we say to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think I definitely went through what you described there. I was angry with myself for sure. I think we can get angry at other people, we can get angry at ourselves, we can blame other people, or we can blame ourselves. And I think most of us do some combination of that when we're struggling. And I certainly at times would blame other people, right? There was certainly times where it was easy to point the finger at something somebody else did that limited my opportunities. this is a gift I have about myself. I've always felt like I was responsible for the circumstances of my life. And
Wow.
so when the circumstances of my life weren't the way I wanted them to be, that was my fault. I started to really, beat myself up internally. And then when you lack the respect for yourself that you talk about there, I had a lot of self-destructive behaviors that entered into my life that spiraled out of control with drugs and alcohol specifically, that were really pretty innocuous and innocent for me, just social fun things to do, that I had the means to do. And then, at some point down the road, they, essentially took everything away from me. But, I
Yeah.
lost my financial security. I lost my physical health. My emotional and mental health was, horrible. So, and when I say that, just to be, so people know what we're talking about, by, 2012, I started dealing with depression when I was young, probably about 12 years old. And I actually just found, as I was going through things, from of my dad's things, yesterday, I found a note or a letter from my mom. He was away for work, and she had written him a letter, and she talked about, we had just moved, and she talked about, my furniture being rearranged and set up in the room. And she said the comment was, she felt like it seemed like I was doing better. And I was probably about 10 or 11, I think, when that was written. And I thought, wow, I didn't realize anybody else saw it or felt it, at that
Mm.
point, that young. And then a couple of years later, there was certainly an awareness from my parents, but they didn't, really know
Yeah.
what to do. And I that the depression specifically, by the time it had gotten worse through my teens. By the time I was in my early 20s, I really had it. I don't know why. I think I was just excited to be an adult and go out and kind of be doing my own thing, and didn't deal with depression as much. Self-doubt was certainly always a factor. But by the time 2012 had come around, so this is flash forward about, 10 more years or so, I started to deal with really severe depression. And it got to where I was contemplating suicide, pretty regularly. I'd say about once a week. By the time, I finally started to really get right-sided, which was 2018. So that's 6 years later. I was contemplating suicide every day and frequently throughout the day. It was a heavy weight and a dark cloud that I carried with me
Yeah.
everywhere I went. And so I think it's important to say that, so people know kind of what we're talking about, as opposed to dancing around it.
Yeah. And before we dive deeper into that aspect, there's something you said before, and you said, I always took it on the responsibility that I was the cause of my issues or what was going on in my life that I didn't like. And there's two ways to do that. And one way is this: we really take it internally and make it mean that we're not very good, that there's something wrong with us, that why can't we do this? Everybody else has these great lives and whatever. What is wrong with us that we have not been able to do it? And then there's oh, well, I have been going to the bar 5 nights a week instead of getting up and getting a good night's sleep and doing this and doing that. So there's two different ways to look at that responsibility piece. It's like there's this responsibility piece of like, oh, I'm not taking the actions that will get me to where I want to go. I am not being the person that will get me to where I want to go. And oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm terrible. I'm horrible. And that's why I can't get to where I go. And one of those ways will help pull you out of a depression or will help you to move forward towards what you want. And the other way will typically act more like an anchor and pull you further and further down. And
Yeah,
so,
I think
yeah.
that's 100% accurate. And I, I went through both those cycles at different times. And I think one of the things that I learned is that, if you ask yourself why your life is screwed up, your brain will give you an answer. And if you
Mm.
ask yourself, why is it that, I love what you said there. It's like going to the bar 5 nights a week. And in my prime, it was 6 or 7 a lot. And it's like,
Me
but
too.
yeah. And you ask yourself, why do I keep doing this? Why I don't want to do this. Not that I don't want to socialize and have fun and do those things, but I don't want my life to be consumed by it. But yet your behavior doesn't change. And a lot of that's because you keep if you ask, why am I going to the bar 5 nights a week, your subconscious will tell you, well, it's because you need this and your life is shitty and the only thing you have going for you is these good times you have when you're out. And so it's really about taking advantage of the power that our subconscious minds have and starting to ask different questions. And so whatever behavioral patterns somebody's stuck in, if they have to stop and start asking different questions, because that's how our brains work. We're constantly asking ourselves questions, more so than actually telling ourselves answers. But we tend to think in questions. And I think that the two things that you described there, the two ways of processing that response, that personal responsibility, it's really, really important to ask quality questions and say, well, who is it that I am? Who is it that I want to be? And what is it that I'm going to do about it? You touched on that, and the action is so important. Is what are the steps that I want to take, and what are the things that I want to do? And they're different for everybody. That's
Right.
I think so important, is that you can't look at somebody else's action path and think, well, if I just duplicate that, that's what's going to work for me. And
Right.
it's a good place to start. If you see somebody else who's been successful doing what you want to do, that's a great place to start. But it's not the 100% answer for any of us. We have to find our way on our own to some degree.
Right. And having guides along the way is definitely a powerful thing. So you're sitting in this place of contemplating suicide on a regular basis, contemplating taking your life. And there was this point when you went to cat sit. There's this mind
Yep.
shift moment for you.
Yeah.
Tell us about this. Tell us a little bit about leading up to that place and
Yeah.
then what shifted for you that day.
Yeah. So in 2016 is when I would say I kind of hit rock bottom. And before that, I kept thinking, well, things can't get any worse, and they kept getting worse. And at that point, I was living.
Oh, we just cut out more
Electricity.
technical work.
Oh,
Okay, so
am,
at that
am I
time,
am I
there we go.
back? Okay.
You're back. Okay, at that
Um,
time,
so I had my gas turned off and my electricity turned off in my apartment, and I was moving in with a roommate, which there's nothing wrong with. But I was around 40 years old, and at 40 years old, you've had a successful career and you've lived on your own and so on and so forth. The idea of moving, at least for me, moving in with a roommate was a tremendous ego blow. And so that was the bottom of it financially. I did, from making that move and getting things kind of right sided, I started to make some progress, but it was very, 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 very slow progress. And it was usually one step forward and 2 steps back from 2016 and into 2018. So at that point, I was, a close friend of mine had, mentored me and got me into the real estate business to work with him, and was helping me out a lot in so many ways as a friend and as a mentor. And I was working really hard, and I was going to cat sit, and I had the business, but it wasn't consistently paying my bills. So I was also driving Uber, close to 40 hours a week, almost a full-time job to keep income in and bills paid. So I went to cat sit and went inside, and they had a note prepared for me, and they had all these, meals and stuff prepared for me for the week that they had done. And I was incredibly touched by that. And then alongside it, they had there was $100 with it. And I was so relieved, and I was so excited that was there, because it meant that I didn't have to drive that night. I could take a night off. And then, but it was also immediately like, I didn't want to accept money. I had no intention of that. I was doing a favor for a friend and, wanted to help them. And I got really emotional because it was like, how have I arrived at a place where $100 makes this big of a difference in my life? And, I'd been working, I'd been trying, and I'd been doing a lot of things to kind of fix my life, so to speak. And, so I got really emotional about it, and I stopped, and, I was given the gift of not having to drive that night. So I did a lot of deep reflection, and I just committed to, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to find it. And I was, still drinking and using drugs, not heavily at that point, but frequently. And I was a pack a day smoker. So I went and I grabbed my cigarettes and I threw them in the trash can. I said, I'm done with that. And I said, I'm done with drugs and alcohol, and I'm gonna figure this out. Every ounce of energy that I have is gonna go towards, committing to making my life better, because I still believed that if I became successful, if I had a successful real estate career and made a lot of money, that would allow me to be happy in all the other areas. I could have a good relationship. I could go on great vacations. I missed all the things I used to be able to do. And I thought, I didn't necessarily believe that was, I hadn't forgotten that I wasn't happy then, but I knew it was so much better than where I was currently at.
Right.
So I was super, super motivated. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, where you hit this point, you hit this wall, and you're like, I've got to break through this. I've got to do this. And so that's where I was at. And for about 4 months, was perfectly sober, didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't do anything. And I thought, all right, man, this is great. I've lost a lot of weight. I've been working out 5 times a week. I feel better. I look better. I'd had some success career-wise. Things were coming along pretty good.
Okay.
And
So I want to point out one thing, because you had said earlier about, giving the brain questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I love about this point is you gave yourself a more powerful question. Instead of why is this all happening to me? It's like, how can I make this better?
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out how to make this better. And I know in one of my own mind shift moments of, literally 1 foot off a cliff, and when I stepped back and then cried it all out later that night, I had this moment where the problem shifted. It was not, how do I get out of pain? It's, how do I make things better? And how do I solve this new problem? So it's kind of just like what you said, giving a more powerful, a better question.
Yeah.
And so what was it about specifically the cigarettes, the drugs, and the alcohol that for you, that was the first step? Why was it about, what was it about those particular things that made you decide that those would be the first thing you would try, the first things you would try?
Yeah. So I knew, I didn't feel good at that point. I was not in good health. I was pretty heavy, and I lacked energy. And I knew what I was asking myself to do required a significant amount of physical energy to do it. And so that was a big part of it. The other piece of it for me was realizing that if your career's not where you want it to be, but you're spending X amount of time, X amount of hours out at the bar, and then you wake up the next day and you don't feel your best, you're not sharp. Well, no wonder, right? It takes, to be successful in any career, it takes maximum effort. I don't know successful people who don't work hard at what they do. Sometimes they don't look like they're working hard, and if that's true, their career ends up falling apart at some point. But it takes work and it takes effort. So for me, it was kind of obvious that I knew that it wasn't successful, and I couldn't have articulated it at the point, but I had this intuition too that a lot of the mental and emotional suffering that I was putting myself through was not being helped by drugs and alcohol. So I'd always been writing during this time, but not professionally. And so early on in my life, drugs and alcohol seemed to kind of stimulate some creativity. At least it felt like that. And I told myself that. By that point in my life, I realized that it was stealing any creativity that I had. And it was not, there was no happiness or joy that was coming from it. And I knew, so I just did, at that point it was desperation. It was like, this is clearly not working. And I think that is the thing about asking an empowering question is saying, okay, well, there's all this stuff that's whatever I've been doing to this point is clearly not working. And so you look for things to change. And for me, that was just a really obvious one. And it was, I think, I was so excessive in those areas of my life that the price that I had to pay for it was really, really significant. And so I just intuitively knew that I was not going to get to where I wanted to, continuing down that path.
Yeah.
And so, flash forward 4 months later when I had been sober and hadn't smoked. And I thought, well, I'd like to be able to go out and have a couple glasses of wine and socialize and be a normal, human being. And so that was fine. And then I thought, well, I could go outside and have a cigarette. That's not a problem. That doesn't mean I'm a smoker. It just means I'm having a cigarette. And then you end up buying a pack of cigarettes the next day. And then the 2 or 3 glasses of wine one night a week becomes, 8 glasses of wine 2 nights a week. And I didn't get back to where I was, but there was, at least 1 or 2 nights a month for the back half of that year where I was binge drinking and using drugs again and chain smoking and the whole thing. And it just, every time I did. And so at that point in my life, I felt really, 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 really guilty. Because I would feel awful physically, I'd feel awful the next day and probably 2 or 3. And so again, I'm in this position where it's like, I'm trying to work and I'm trying to move my career forward, but I'm not having the kind of success and I'm not making the kind of consistent progress that I should have been. And so, by the end of that year, December of 2018, I'd started to have some pretty significant health problems and, started dealing with vertigo, and I didn't know exactly everything that was going on, but I was like, it's not a game anymore. This was not something
Right.
I could keep playing with. And so in the middle of December of 2018, I got sober once and for all. I've never had a cigarette or a drink or anything since. And boy, am I glad that I finally did that. And I think at that point in my life, there was I decided to stop being guilty and say,
Right.
on April 13th, when I made this commitment, I made that commitment and I believed in it and I still believe in it. And just because I failed along the way doesn't mean I need to start all the way over. And it doesn't mean that I'm a broken human being. It means I tried
Right.
something that was difficult to do and I wasn't able to successfully do it yet, but I'm going to do
And
it this time.
oh, that is the yet. The yet is so powerful.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, we look at, okay, our life is a mess and it's not the way that we want. And what can we do? It's like you can make a list of all the things that are not right in your life. And then you got to look at what is it that you can actually control. And so leaning into quitting the drugs and the alcohol, that's something you could definitely control. Like you
Yeah.
can't necessarily fully control the types of clients you're attracting, like not yet anyway, not at this place where everything is just really messy. You can't necessarily control the people around you. You can't control things like a pandemic or the economy, like all of those things you can't control. So it's always got to start with you. What is it that you can control? And giving up the drugs and alcohol is a really good first step. And for people out there that are struggling with that, it is a first step. And I know that it's like, oh God, there's more. That's hard enough. And also, just as you said, we're you can it's not easy. So
Yeah.
we can it's okay when you can learn to let go of the guilt for the mistakes, right? Like, things out of our control. Well,
Yeah.
tech, we did everything in our control to control the tech glitches, and they still came up, but it's just a mistake. And we don't get you, the less you can, the less you beat yourself up, the faster you move on and are like, okay, that happened. All right, I learned
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Then the sooner you can actually move towards the things that actually really start to make the life better. And it sounds like, starting to have those health problems, it's almost like maybe there was a part of you going, hey, Sean, remember that thing that you were going to do to help make your life better?
Yeah, I had that thing going on for a decade before I did it, but
I think
um,
most
yeah,
people do.
yeah, I think that um, it's important to realize too. It's like when you said, "Oh my God, there's more to it after step one." Well, there's when doing hard things is incredibly empowering, and doing the
Mhm.
things that you can control and being disciplined and being faithful to them, it becomes so symbolic and empowering in your life that, okay, I can do this thing that's hard, and I can do it because I want to. And that really, when you start to understand, well, wait a minute, I can do the things that I want to do. And so your belief system change, and you start to think, well, what else can I do? And you talk about, like, you can't control the clients you're attracting at that stage in your point
Yes.
of your life, and that's so true. Yeah, it's yet, but when you start to engage in those things that are so tangible in your physical health, by the way, for anybody struggling with emotional or mental health issues, it's not there's no one solution that works for everybody. And it's tremendous suffering, and but I think that for most people, exercising, eating right, not doing drugs and alcohol, that's giving your body the chance that it needs to right side itself, both mentally and emotionally. And sometimes we forget that our physical chemistry controls our brain, and our brain controls our
Right.
emotions, and it's all linked. And you have to take control of it. And I think that the other thing I would say that is an important mind shift when you're trying to make changes in your life is, because guilt is such a massive derailer, and it leads, when you feel guilty, you stimulate the fear monster, because it's like, I feel bad for what I've done, and so now I'm afraid I'm going to do those things again, or I'll keep making the same mistakes. And I think the 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 most important thing we can do is forgive ourselves for things that we regret, and also realize that whatever you've done that's wrong, whether you've hurt other people or you've hurt yourself. And by the way, everybody's hurt other people and everybody's hurt themselves. It's really important to realize that that's part of your journey, and that's part of who you are and who you have become to that moment. And there is a tremendous opportunity to use all of that in what it is that you want to become. And had you not made those mistakes, and had you not gone through those difficult journeys that you feel guilty about, you wouldn't have nearly the amount of resources that you currently have to move forward and pursue whatever it is that you want to do. So, you know, embrace whatever has been to get you where you are, and then leave it behind. The past is useless to all of us. It's fun to learn. I love history, so I love archaeology, I love history. um, those things are awesome. So I'm not saying not to learn from the past, but when the story that is playing in your mind is about stuff that happened in your childhood, or mistakes that you made as a young adult or as a teenager, is not productive and is not going to help you. You've got to take control of your thought process to focus on, who am I right now, and who do I want to become, and work towards that. And that's
Right.
where you get a lot of empowerment in that process.
Well, and one of those things, we touched on this when you're talking about doing those things that you can control, creating discipline, like eating well, exercising, and you want to do this stuff if you're not a person that can just jump in and change everything and have the discipline. Start with one little thing. Like, I do squats when I brush my teeth. Like, that's a little tiny thing that
Yeah.
I can do to add exercise. And as you do that, you begin to build that thing that we were talking about, is like that self-respect and a little bit higher opinion of yourself. And you also, speaking of brain chemicals and brain thought processes and all of that, when you accomplish something hard, you release dopamine.
Yeah.
When you set a goal and you achieve it, you release dopamine, and that's the feel good neurotransmitter in the brain, that it's literally designed to keep us motivated. So that's another thing in that process. Set smaller goals, not so small that you could do them with your eyes closed, but set smaller goals so that you get those dopamine hits along the way, so that you're continuing to feed that motivation. And I know a lot of us that grew up feeling maybe like we weren't worthy or good enough, or had circumstances in life sort of mirror that to us or make us think that that was the case. We tend to think in big grandiose things, like where we've got to, like, okay, well, if I just sell out Madison Square Gardens, then I will be good enough.
Yeah.
and
No, that's so true.
and that's just, obviously that's a really big goal, and it could be something to work towards, but you've got to have smaller little goals along the way to feed the dopamine monster so that
Yeah.
you stay motivated and you can keep that, building that self-respect and that opinion of yourself.
Yeah. And I think that there's so much joy that comes from struggle when you're struggling. And I think this is the key. If you're struggling on something that you want to do, and you're struggling to become the person you want to become, and you get a little bit of success, it doesn't take much, and it feels great. And then, but then that feeling goes away pretty quickly. And the more success you have, the more you start to realize that it's not the success that makes you happy. It's the work that you do, and it's who you become in the process of pursuing yourself that truly makes you happy. And, you know, I think, so Kobe Bryant passed away not so long ago. And um, I was fascinated by how much people were moved by him. It was more than, when celebrities die, it's become very, very common that there's this reaction of remorse about somebody you didn't know. And but there was a different outpouring with Kobe Bryant, and part of it is the way he died in the youth and all that. But I started to dig into his life and what he did a little more than I had before. And he, when his jersey was retired, he gave this speech, and he turned to his daughters and he said, "I know that hard work, you can make your dreams come true with hard work. I know you know that." And he said, "But the thing that is the dream is that you get up at 5 a.m. and do the work. And when you're late at night, you do the work. And the dream isn't the championships. It's when you're doing the work." And I think that he modeled that, and we all saw that and kind of intrinsically knew that, right? This is somebody who's committed and passionate about what they do at all times, win, lose, or draw. And he did it with joy, right? And so that touches us all in a way that we're not even necessarily able to articulate while we're experiencing it. But that's the work ethic, but that's also the ability to be fulfilled in the work that you're doing while you're doing it, that leads to the success. And then when you get the success, you go back to doing the work, whatever it was. And I think about Kobe Bryant after he retired, and he was making films, and he was doing all kinds of other things that made him happy, and that he was continuing to be successful in. And I think it's because he understood that doing the work is where the joy is. It's not in the result.
Yeah. And that's huge. And so I just want to leave everybody as we kind of start to wrap up. So here you are, you've quit drinking, you've quit smoking, you're done. You were still having some health issues?
Yeah. So 2019 was a brutal year for me health wise, and so it was the first year that I was sober. But I was diagnosed with lupus. I was struggling with vertigo, And, on a good day, I felt like I had the flu. I dealt with severe respiratory illness for 6 weeks, 2 months at a time, 4 or 5 times during the year. So I was literally like, if you have a bad chest cold, that's how I was most of the year. And obviously I was going to physicians for medicine and to kind of try to figure out what was going on. And truthfully, the first half of that year, nobody could figure out what was going on. And so I kind of figured it out. It's like, well, your body's just cleaning itself out. You've done a lot of damage here over the time. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that was my story, is that my body just needed time and it needed to clean itself out. I think that makes some sense. But it was a really, really, really rough year. I'd been working hard and so my career was going better and I was busier. So it was a little bit of a catch-22. It's like I struggled to get through my day sometimes, just from an energy standpoint. And, the blessing of it is in social situations when, people would offer a drink or whatever, the temptation was not there at all for me. It was like, it was kind of like, ooh, no. My body told me, I was very fortunate that my body told me it was done. And we were, but it was, and that year was a really, 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 really difficult year because again, you start to question, like, I'm in so much pain and I'm suffering so much and I'm trying to do everything right. And, there's moments I would be just devastated, crying, like I'm trying so hard. Why is it that all this is still happening to me? And the answer to that question we'll get to in the next episode and where that goes. But the 2019 was a really, really difficult year. But I alluded to it earlier. But the lesson for me in that year was that doing hard things is empowering and what makes us feel alive. And I think that had I chosen, I look back and there was several opportunities I had to chuck it and not keep trying. And I'm so glad that I did because it's like it's the old cliche that the night is darkest before the morning, before the sun rises. And I won't quote it exactly, but there's an old Louis L'Amour quote where he says, you'll reach a point in your life where you think that all is lost, and that is the beginning. And so that was 2019 for me. It was just kind of persisting through that and staying the course and realizing, I had taken several years, over a decade, to screw my life up. Doing everything right for a year wasn't going to get me all the way back. So
and I think so many people can relate to that place when they've really been putting in the work and they've churned things around and they're trying so hard, but they're still not where they want to be.
Yeah.
And so I think this is the perfect place to wrap up this episode. But I would love for you have a special discount that you're offering for the listeners and the watchers.
They can't use it until next week. They have to know the end of the story before they can. I'm kidding. No. So Wolf30 is the promo code that's good for 30% off everything in the Learning Center on the website. And I think all the information's there in links or in the banner.
For those listening, it's Shaun-Randall.com, and that's SHAUN-RANDALL.com. And in the Learning Center, if you use the discount code, this is all capitals, Wolf30, you get 30% off all the programs in the Learning Center, which is so cool.
Yes. And the other thing I always like to say is, if there's a need that somebody's aware of and somebody and something is cost prohibitive for somebody, please email me and we'll figure it out a way. So my life is committed to helping people and hopefully not go through the same journey that I went through. Everybody has to go through their own journey, but at least learn from the mistakes that I've made, and more importantly, learn from the successes that I've had. And I'm so, honestly, I don't want to leave right now. I want to get right into 2020, but we'll have to come back. We'll have to come back and do this again next week.
Yeah. And so the question I want to ask you for just sort of this wrap up, at this point in time, this place where you still don't have what you needed or what you thought you wanted, and it wasn't there, and you're in that place of why me? I'm trying so hard. If you were going to give that man a piece of advice, because I know a lot of people can relate to that point, what would be the thing you would tell him?
Well, unironically, I would say just wait to see what happens. The best is yet to come. I fervently believe that the future will always be better. And if it's not better, we'd really better enjoy right now. So whatever that is, but I think the thing that I wish I knew, but I wish I would have had somebody smack me, upside the head, is stop trying to be all these. The reason that you're trying so hard and you're not getting what you want is because you're trying to be somebody other than who you are. And it's easy to get those things confused. In my career, I enjoyed what I did. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy the work, and there were so many positives to what I was doing, but it wasn't my thing. It wasn't my true thing. It was, I guess it would be one of them, but it wasn't my end all be all, or there's so many different ways you'd say it. Let's say true calling, right? And so
Right.
The advice I would tell him is that, stop what you're doing and just pursue your true passions. And whatever happens, well, first of all, I can guarantee you it'll be far superior to the life you're living now. There's really no way to fail. The only way you can fail is by not pursuing it. And that the feelings that you want of fulfillment, of joy, of abundance, those feelings will come, and they will only come when you turn inside of yourself and decide that I'm going to be everything that I want to be and everything that I am meant to be. And any day spent doing anything else is it's not a complete waste of time, because you'll learn from it, but it's going to continue you down a path of not being fulfilled in your life. So follow your dreams, pursue your passion.
Yes, pursue the passion and be who you're born to be, right? That's the wolf.
Yeah.
Sean, thank you. I'm so excited. I can't wait till next week. And for those of you all listening, we are not recording these episodes back to back, so I have to wait a week too. All right. Thank you for sharing your journey and honoring us with your presence and sharing your wisdom. And I'm so looking forward to next week.
Well, the pleasure and the honor was mine, and I'm jazzed and ready to go for next week.
Awesome.
So we'll talk then.
All right, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.